The evening sun bled across the horizon as Cole Maddox guided his horse down the winding trail into Red Hollow. Dust clung to his coat. The reins creaked and the air carried a silence that felt unnatural, as though the town itself had stopped breathing. He slowed at the edge of the main road, where a crude wooden gallows rose like a scar against the sky. 4 women dangled from ropes, their lifeless forms swaying gently in the wind. Their shadows stretched long across the dirt, pointing directly toward him, as if accusing. Cole pulled his hat lower, his jaw tight. He had seen death before, on battlefields and on lonely stretches of prairie. But this was different. This was no outlaw's hanging, no trial carried out by law. This was punishment without a voice. And the sign nailed to the gallows made it clear. Carved letters read, "Some secrets stay buried." The words were uneven, burned into the board as though written in anger, meant not just as a warning, but as a verdict. His horse snorted and shifted nervously, sensing his rider's unease. Cole dismounted slowly, boots crunching on the gravel. He looked at each woman in turn, trying to fix their faces in memory. One of them, with a ribbon still tangled in her dark hair, struck him hardest. He had seen her once in town, smiling faintly as she carried a basket through the market. Now her body hung limp, her eyes forever closed. He exhaled sharply, the bitterness rising in his chest. "God help us," he muttered under his breath. His voice was low, but the words carried in the still air. A wagon rattled into view at the far end of the street. 2 townsfolk glanced toward the gallows, then quickly looked away, urging their mules faster. Not one dared stop. Their silence was louder than any cry, and it pressed heavy against Cole's chest. He turned back to the sign, reading the words again. The secret had weight. Whatever these women knew, it was worth killing for, and worth silencing the whole town. He tugged the brim of his hat, his eyes narrowing. "You didn't deserve this," he whispered, voice raw. He had no flowers, no prayer, only the promise in his heart that he would not ride away and pretend. Behind him, a voice cut the silence. "Best keep moving, stranger. Nothing here worth your time." Cole turned sharply. An old man leaned on the rail of a shuttered store, his shoulders stooped, eyes wary. He spat in the dust and shook his head. "You knew them?" Cole asked. The man stiffened, then looked away. "Best not ask questions. Best not care." He retreated inside, slamming the door. Cole stared at the closed shutters, then back at the swaying bodies. Fear ruled this place, and fear was the rope that bound them all. He set his jaw, swung back into the saddle, and fixed his gaze on the heart of town. He had inherited land here, but what he had truly inherited was a fight. With the sun dipping lower, he spurred his horse forward, carrying the weight of a promise he hadn't spoken aloud. Whatever secret had taken those lives, he would drag it into the light, even if it meant standing alone against the gallows. Cole's horse clattered over the wooden planks of Red Hollow's main street, the sound echoing in a place too quiet for its size. Shutters were drawn, though the sun still hung in the sky, and the saloon that should have been alive with music sat dark, its swinging doors unmoving. He slowed, scanning faces, peeking through curtains, vanishing the instant his eyes found them. It was a town breathing, but only in shallow gasps. He reined up in front of the blacksmith's shop. The forge was cold, the hammer silent, though the tools lay scattered as if abandoned mid-work. Cole dismounted and tied his horse, boots striking hard against the boards. A shopkeeper across the street froze halfway through stacking crates. Their gazes met. The man quickly turned, muttering under his breath as he dragged the last crate inside. Cole adjusted his hat and stepped onto the boardwalk. "Afternoon," he said evenly. though his voice carried like a stone dropping into still water. No one answered. Doors closed, locks clicked. The street shrank into silence once more. A slow clap broke it. From the shade of the courthouse porch, a man in a tailored coat emerged, boots polished, smile sharp as broken glass. Judge Harlan Briggs looked more like a banker than a man of law. Silver hair slicked, eyes cold despite the warmth of his grin. "Well, well," Briggs drawled, spreading his arms as though greeting an old friend. "Mr. Maddox, I presume. Inheritor of the Maddox spread. I was wondering when you'd ride in." Cole squared his shoulders. "And I'm wondering why 4 women are hanging at my front gate." The judge's smile tightened. "Best you stop wondering. Best you stop asking. This town has delicate balances. Men who upset them tend to find themselves swinging alongside those who already forgot how to breathe." The words hung heavy. Cole studied him, searching for a crack in the polished mask, but Briggs gave none. "You're saying the law approved this?" Cole asked, voice hard. Briggs chuckled low, stepping closer, his cane tapping the wood. "The law is what I say it is. And I say you'll tend to your cattle, keep your mouth shut, and live long enough to enjoy your inheritance." Cole didn't flinch, though every instinct screamed to draw his revolver. Instead, he tilted his head slightly. "And if I don't?" Briggs leaned close enough Cole caught the scent of whiskey on his breath. "Then, son, you'll dangle, just like them." A hush fell so deep it seemed the town itself held its breath. Behind Briggs, 2 deputies shifted, hands brushing the butts of their pistols. Cole said nothing, letting the silence speak louder than any answer. He touched the brim of his hat, turned, and swung into the saddle. As he guided his horse down the street, a sudden movement caught his eye. A stable boy darted from the shadows, pressing something into his hand before vanishing into an alley. Cole looked down at the object, an embroidered ribbon, torn and stained with dust. He recognized it instantly. It belonged to the woman who'd worn her hair bound on the gallows. Cole's jaw tightened. The warning on the sign was real, but now he had proof the dead had carried more than fear. They had carried a truth someone was desperate to bury. Cole rode past the last row of shuttered buildings, the sound of his horse's hooves carrying too loudly in the muted streets. His mind replayed the image of the hanged women, the ribbon now folded carefully in his palm, and the judge's threat that still echoed in his ears. He had faced danger before, but the silence of Red Hollow felt heavier than bullets. Every window that snapped shut as he passed told him the same thing. Fear was the language here, and every man and woman had learned to speak it well. At the edge of town, he noticed the glow of lamplight spilling from a modest adobe house, its door open to the cool evening air. A woman bent over a table inside, grinding herbs with steady hands. When she looked up, their eyes met, and for a moment, her expression softened before concern replaced it. Cole dismounted, hat in hand, and stepped closer. "Name's Maddox," he said quietly. "I reckon you knew one of the women on the gallows." Her face tightened, though her voice remained calm. "I knew them all," she answered, accent tinged with Mexican lilt. "One was my friend since childhood. Her name was Rosa. She laughed louder than anyone, even when she had nothing. Now they've taken her voice, and the town pretends it never existed." Her hand stilled on the table, and she looked at him with dark, steady eyes. "My name is Elena Vega, and if you value your life, you'll ride out before nightfall." Cole set the ribbon on the table between them. This belonged to her. Someone wanted me to have it. The sight made Elena draw a sharp breath, her fingers trembling before she pushed them flat against the wood. For a long moment she said nothing, then finally spoke in a whisper meant only for him. "They died keeping a secret, senor. Something tied to the canyon north of here. something Judge Briggs would bury 100 times over, if he could. But if you go looking, you'll find nothing but bullets waiting. The words carried both warning and sorrow. Yet, beneath her grief, Cole heard a current of defiance. He studied her face, the quiet strength in her gaze, and knew she spoke not only from fear, but from love for those who were gone. He straightened slowly, his decision already forming like steel in his chest. "I've run from enough fights in my life," he said firmly. "This won't be another." Elena's eyes glistened, but she shook her head. "Then you'll share Rosa's fate. And when you swing, the town will look away again." She turned back to her herbs as if the conversation was over, though her trembling hands betrayed her heart. Cole stepped back into the cool night, the ribbon tucked close once more. The secret that killed 4 women was real, and he would not rest until he uncovered it, no matter how high the gallows stood waiting. Cole rode north beneath a sky washed in pale silver, the land stretching wide and empty around him. The ribbon weighed heavy in his pocket, as if it carried the voices of the women demanding to be heard. Elena's warning echoed in his mind, but it was her mention of the canyon that pulled him onward. The judge's threats mattered little now. If there was truth buried out there, he would drag it into daylight. The trail narrowed as cliffs rose on either side, their faces carved with ancient markings half erased by time and weather. His horse stopped short when a figure appeared from the rocks ahead, bow drawn, eyes steady. The man stepped forward with measured calm, a tall warrior wrapped in a faded blanket patterned with red and black. His bow remained raised, the arrow steady, though his expression held no malice, only vigilance. Behind him, 2 more figures emerged from the shadows, each watching Cole with unwavering silence. Cole lifted his hands slowly from the reins. "I'm not here to fight," he said evenly. "Name's Maddox. I reckon you know what happened in town." The bow lowered a fraction before a voice came from the shadows, deep and resonant. An older man stepped forward, his hair streaked with gray, his eyes sharp with wisdom and grief. "I am Chief Tohano," he said, "and yes, I know. 4 women died with courage, yet no one speaks their names. You carry their memory?" Cole nodded once, reaching into his pocket. He held out the ribbon. "One of them gave me this, though I think she meant it for the world to see, not just me." Tohano studied Yeet, then turned his gaze back toward the canyon. "Those women stood for truth. They uncovered the papers, maps and deeds stolen by Judge Briggs and his men. Land that belonged to my people was stripped with ink and signatures. And when they refused to be silent, the rope answered instead." His voice did not tremble. It rang with pride. The younger warriors lowered their bows, though their eyes still watched Cole with caution. Cole shifted in the saddle, his voice steady. "If those papers exist, then Briggs can be broken. But where are they now?" Tohano's face darkened, his gaze drifting to the cliffs. "Hidden, locked away by those who gave their lives to protect them. They wanted the world to know the law had been poisoned, that this land was taken not with honor, but with greed. Yet anyone who speaks is marked for death." The wind whistled between the cliffs, carrying the weight of his words. Cole leaned forward, determination hardening his voice. "Then tell me where to look, Chief. I didn't come here to bury my head in fear." Tohano studied him long, the silence stretching like an unbroken string. At last he spoke. "Proof rests where the canyon swallows the sun. But if you chase it, Maddox, you chase death. Judge Briggs commands not just deputies, but the town's silence. Are you willing to bleed for what they died to protect?" Cole met the chief's gaze without wavering.
I'd rather bleed than stand by while their names rot on the gallows." The old man's eyes softened, and he gave a slow nod. "Then follow me, and pray the earth itself is on your side." The night settled over Red Hollow like a suffocating blanket, the moon a pale sliver, peering through drifting clouds. Cole rode back from the canyon with Chief Tohano's warning heavy on his mind, the path stretching dark and empty beneath the stars. He reached his ranch near midnight, the fences creaking in the wind, the cattle restless, as though they too sensed trouble brewing. He dismounted quietly, but the silence did not last. A faint rustle came from the barn, followed by the sharp scent of kerosene. Cole froze, his hand instinctively drifting to the revolver at his side. A sudden blaze erupted, orange flames leaping high into the night as his barn roared to life in fire. Figures darted from the shadows, masked riders circling the yard like wolves. One fired a shot that ricocheted off the water trough, forcing Cole to dive behind a fence post. The acrid smoke filled his lungs as heat seared against his face. He raised his revolver and fired back, the crack splitting the night. A rider fell, but 3 more closed in. The fight was not just to save wood and cattle. It was a message, one written in fire. Cole's horse bolted as the attackers pressed closer, their pistols flashing in the dark. He ducked, rolled, and fired again, dropping another, but a bullet tore across his arm, leaving it slick with blood. His teeth clenched as pain shot through him, yet his grip held firm. Then, just as one rider leveled a rifle at his chest, a shout rang out from the porch. "Cole down!" He dropped instinctively as a shotgun blast thundered behind him, scattering pellets into the night. The riders cursed, spurred their mounts, and vanished into the darkness, leaving only smoke, fire, and silence. Cole staggered to his feet, clutching his wounded arm. Elena Vega stepped from the porch, the shotgun still smoking in her hands, her face pale in the firelight. "Fool man," she hissed, dropping the weapon to drag him toward the house. "You think you can fight Briggs' men alone? They will come again, and next time they won't leave you breathing." She pushed him into a chair, ripping cloth into strips, her hands trembling yet precise as she pressed against the wound. He winced but did not pull away. "They came because I know too much," Cole said, voice hoarse. "And they'll keep coming until the truth comes out." Elena paused, her eyes locking on his with fierce intensity. "Then you will die for nothing," she whispered, though her hands betrayed her care, binding his arm with a tenderness that words could not hide. Cole leaned back, the fire outside crackling low as smoke drifted into the night. Somewhere beyond the hills, Briggs would be smiling. Certain fear had silenced another man, but Cole knew different. He had bled for the secret now, and once blood was spilled, there was no turning back. The canyon loomed dark and jagged under a clouded sky as Cole rode with 2 Iron Creek scouts guiding the way. Elena followed close, her shawl wrapped tight against the chill, her eyes scanning every shadow with wary resolve. The fire at the ranch had hardened her, replacing warning with quiet determination. The trail narrowed between steep walls, the earth scattered with the loose stone that shifted under the horses' hooves. Every echo carried like a whisper, making Cole's hand rest uneasily on the butt of his revolver. They were not alone out here. That much he knew. The scouts halted near a cliff where the moonlight struck a weathered outcropping. One dismounted and brushed dirt aside, revealing carved symbols etched into the stone. He pressed his hand against them and looked at Cole. "Here," he said softly, his voice low as the wind. Cole and Elena slid from their saddles, and together they pried loose a heavy slab. Beneath it lay a hollowed space wrapped in oilskin. Cole dragged it out, heart pounding as he tore the covering away. Inside rested ledgers, maps, and folded deeds bearing the mark of Judge Briggs. The names of families crossed out, replaced with signatures that stripped them of land, proof enough to bring the whole courthouse crumbling. Elena gasped, clutching one of the maps. "This is why they died," she whispered, her voice trembling with both fury and grief. Cole scanned the pages, his jaw set like stone. They wanted the truth remembered. Now we hold it. But before he could say more, the sound of loose gravel tumbled from above. His head snapped upward, just as rifle barrels glinted in the moonlight. Briggs's men had followed them, silhouettes crawling along the ridge. "Down!" Cole shouted, pulling Elena behind the stone as bullets spat sparks into the canyon floor. The scouts fired arrows that cut through the dark, one rider toppling with a cry, but more poured down the slope. Cole returned fire, his shots sharp and fast, forcing the attackers back just enough to buy them seconds. The canyon roared with echoes of gunfire, dust filling the air, the proof nearly slipping from Cole's grasp as he clutched it tight to his chest. A sudden crack thundered from the cliffs, louder than any rifle. Rocks trembled, shifting above them. The gunfire stopped as both sides looked up in dread. With a deafening crash, a landslide tore free, boulders cascading like thunder down the slope. Cole tackled Elena against the canyon wall as stone and dust buried the center of the trail. When the rumble ceased, silence swallowed the canyon once more. Cole rose slowly, chest heaving, the oilskin bundle still in his arms. Across the new wall of stone, Briggs's men had scattered, their shouts fading into the distance. He looked at Elena, dirt streaking her face, but her eyes burning with fire. "They tried to bury it," he said, voice ragged but certain, "but the truth survived." The next morning, the town of Red Hollow gathered in the square, drawn by the sound of the courthouse bell. Judge Briggs stood on the wooden steps, polished boots gleaming, his silver hair catching the sun. His voice carried smooth and commanding as he addressed the crowd, painting himself as protector of order. Men nodded. Women clutched their children, all listening as though his words were law, written on stone. Yet whispers cut through the air when Cole Maddox rode in, his coat torn, arm bound in cloth, the bundle of ledgers strapped to his saddle. He stopped before the courthouse, dismounted, and let the proof fall heavy in his hand. "This," he shouted, lifting the papers high, "is the truth 4 women died for. Stolen land, forged deeds, lies signed by this man who calls himself your judge." Gas rippled through the crowd. Briggs's face darkened, but his smile remained, though thinner now, strained at the edges. "Lies," he spat, tapping his cane. "This drifter is nothing but trouble. These are forgeries, tricks from savages and thieves." His words rang false, and murmurs of doubt stirred among the people. Cole tossed the papers at the sheriff's boots. "Read them yourself. Every signature, every theft. The women you left hanging tried to warn you. Their blood stains this man's hands." The sheriff bent slowly, picking up the bundle. His eyes scanned the pages, lips pressed tight. The deputies shifted uneasily, their fingers twitching on gun belts. Briggs saw the hesitation, rage flashing across his face. "Enough," he thundered. He yanked a pistol from inside his coat, and before anyone could react, he seized Elena from the edge of the crowd, dragging her against him, the barrel pressed to her temple. Gas turned screams, the crowd stumbling back in fear. Cole froze, his heart pounding as Elena's eyes locked on his. "Drop your gun, Maddox," Briggs barked, sweat gleaming on his forehead, "or I paint these steps red with her blood." Silence swallowed the square, every eye on Cole, waiting. His hand hovered near his revolver, but his mind raced. If he moved too fast, she would die. If he yielded, the town would sink back into silence forever. Elena's voice, steady despite the pistol at her head, cut through the tension. "Cole," she whispered, barely audible but meant for him alone. Don't let him win. Her words struck deeper than the threat, sparking the fire in his chest. Briggs's arm trembled as Cole slowly raised his hands, pretending to surrender. His eyes never left Elena's, and she gave the faintest nod. In that heartbeat, Cole shifted, drew, and fired in one fluid motion. The shot cracked like thunder, echoing across the square. Briggs staggered back, the pistol slipping from his grasp as blood blossomed across his coat. Elena tore free, stumbling into Cole's arms as the crowd erupted into chaos. Deputies half raised their weapons, but the sheriff barked a command, leveling his own rifle at Briggs. For the first time, the judge's smile was gone, replaced with a look of sheer disbelief as he collapsed onto the courthouse steps. The square pulsed with silence after the shot. Every face turned to the courthouse steps where Judge Briggs lay gasping, his hand pressed to the wound, staining his fine coat. The pistol clattered from his grip, forgotten in the dust. For the first time, the mask of power slipped, leaving only fear in his eyes. Cole stood steady, revolver still smoking. Elena clutched close against his side, her breath ragged, but her gaze burning with defiance. The sheriff stepped forward, the bundle of deeds gripped tight in his hands. His jaw worked, torn between years of loyalty and the truth now bleeding in front of him. Finally, he lifted the papers high for all to see. "These are no lies," he barked, his voice shaking the silence. "This town was stolen, carved up and sold for greed. These women swung because they dared to speak it. And this man," he pointed the barrel of his rifle at Briggs, "is no judge. He's a thief in a robe." Gas rippled through the crowd. Men who had lowered their heads now raised them. Women who had turned away from the gallows clenched their fists, tears shining in their eyes. The deputies shifted, waiting for Briggs' command, but none came. His lips moved, sputtering protest, but the power had drained from his voice. One by one, the deputies dropped their hands from their guns and stepped back. Briggs tried to rise, his cane slipping from his grasp. "I am the law," he croaked, spitting blood. "Without me, you're nothing but dust and savages." His words faltered as no one moved to help him. Cole stepped forward, eyes hard. "No," he said firmly, each word cutting sharp. "Without truth, you are nothing." And they died, proving it. The sheriff snapped irons onto Briggs' wrists, hauling him to his knees. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in something deeper, a release of fear that had strangled them for too long. Murmurs rose into shouts, voices carrying names of the women finally spoken aloud in defiance. Cole felt Elena's hand slip into his, trembling but strong. Her whisper carried above the noise. "They are free now." Briggs was dragged toward the jailhouse, his head bowed, his rein broken. Cole watched, chest heavy, knowing the fight was not over, but a corner had been turned. For the first time since he rode into Red Hollow, silence was not born of fear. It was the hush of a town taking its first breath of truth. The sun rose slowly over Red Hollow the next morning, its light touching the gallows, where 4 ropes still swayed gently in the breeze. Cole stood before them, hat in hand, the weight of silence pressing heavy on his shoulders. Elena stood at his side, her shawl drawn close, eyes glistening as she whispered the names of the women one by one. Townsfolk gathered in hushed reverence, no longer afraid to speak what had once been forbidden. With a steady hand, the sheriff cut each rope, letting them fall limp into the dust. The crowd bowed their heads, and for the first time, the gallows no longer felt like a throne of fear, but a grave that could finally rest. Cole looked to Elena, her face weary yet strong. She placed a hand on his arm, grounding him in the moment. "They are free now," she said softly. He nodded, voice low but firm. and as long as I draw breath, their secret will never be buried again. The words carried more than promise. They were a vow, carved into the bones of the land itself. Chief Tohano stepped forward, his weathered face lit by the rising sun. "Justice is a river," he said, his voice calm and proud. "It bends, it twists, but today it flows again." The tribe's people stood behind him, shoulders straight, their dignity unbroken despite all they had endured. Cole turned his gaze to the horizon, the Maddox land stretching wide and untamed. It was no longer just inheritance. It was responsibility. He felt Elena's fingers tighten around his, a silent pledge that he would not walk this path alone. As the morning wind scattered the dust, Cole lifted his hat and whispered a final prayer to the women who had been taken. "Some secrets," he said, eyes steady on the endless sky, "are worth dying for, but this one was worth living to tell."